Welcome, everybody, to another very big edition of This Week in Crypto. Maksim, our founder, should be joining shortly, and I've got plenty to cover with tariffs being the talk of the town as of now, but not in quite the way you would expect. Cryptocurrency is staying quite intact and not really moving much whatsoever. It did yesterday when we saw that Trump's announcements were coming in, but today, it appears that they've kind of been staying put while stock markets are seeing its second straight day of what looks like to be on pace for a 5% or more drop. Yesterday, it dropped somewhere around 5.1%. As of now, the S&P is down about 4.8%. So add that up, and we've seen about a 10% shed in overall market cap for the S&P 500. That is the biggest two-day span, if it holds by the end of the day, since early 2020, when we had a little thing known as COVID-19 wreaking havoc on the world. So yeah, just a little over 5 years since we last saw drops of this size. And many in crypto are kind of wondering, how long is this going to last? And more importantly, why are we insulated from this? Because obviously, crypto has been tethered somewhat to the S&P 500 throughout the past three plus years or so, ever since 2022, when we saw interest rate modifications, if you will, from the US Fed, and stock markets and crypto began to plummet in unison. That is not happening this time around. And the obvious reason is that crypto is not an import or an export. Crypto is not something that is internationally shipped and needing to be tariffed. However, there are still crypto projects that, have exposure to these tariffs and can be affected. There's just not really much compared to what we would normally see in terms of volatility and overall dropping from crypto the way it usually does whenever the S&P 500 goes through a big correction like it is at the moment. So yes, it's I guess something worth being a little bit happy about if you are exclusively exposed in crypto right now. But the question is, will this last? Can crypto, for the first time in a little over 3 years, be able to survive or even thrive on its own without the dependence on the S&P 500 and the normal health of the stock market? So what we're looking at right now is the 24-hour changes. You can see that Bitcoin is actually up slightly, 0.7%, not something you'd expect when you see a 5% drop in the S&P 500, but here we are. Ethereum up a little bit as well, 0.65%. And you can see it's pretty even across the board. There was, yesterday it was down to the 81Ks, but it did have a slight rebound. Several altcoins are doing quite well also, or at least hanging out in a fairly neutral pattern at the moment. You can see social volume wise, not much change compared to yesterday. There was an increased overall social volume and social dominance discussion, but that mostly happened yesterday, and it's kind of maintained that same consistency today as all of the heads are turning toward tariffs at the moment. To give an idea of how things look on the social trend side, as you would expect, tariffs dominating. We have singular tariff and plural tariffs, the word market, the word Trump, and then we've got the word gold, which we can get into in a moment. Gold has obviously been the biggest winner of 2025 so far. Even before this tariff madness came into effect, we had been hearing rumors about it since before Trump was even elected back in early November. And he had talked about this being one of his policies he's going to be initiating. Obviously, he's staying true to his word. The big asterisk today is China decided to initiate a 34% tariff on the US. I probably should have led with that, but here we are. China is retaliating, or at least that's essentially how people are taking it, and implementing tariffs on the U.S. for 34%, so just a little over a third of any export from the U.S. into China is now getting a very large cost associated with it. That's exactly what the U.S. just did with Trump's big board full of countries that he showed about a day and a half ago. And so now, instead of Trump getting what he is ultimately hoping for, or saying he's hoping for, which is everybody reducing their tariffs mutually, we're getting the opposite. Everyone is raising their tariffs mutually, or at least China is so far, and there's fears that other countries will be tagging along shortly. If you haven't heard, over the past week or so, China, Japan, and South Korea have essentially come into an allyship, if you will, over this topic so that they could essentially stick together and work in tandem to combat some of the policies that Trump is implementing right now. So experts will not be surprised if we see stuff from Japan coming in, South Korea, and a lot of Asian countries, which, by the way, Asian countries are the most impacted on average by these tariffs right now. Just to show you the quick list, because I did put out an article yesterday about this. In fact, it was about a day and a half ago, I put it out. U.S. tariffs finally receiving clarity. So I put this out on Wednesday afternoon, and it's a pretty helpful read. If you aren't really following tariffs or don't know much about them, I kind of wrote it from the approach of explain like I'm five type of approach, where it's just straight explanations about how tariffs work, how these particular tariffs work, what the reciprocal tariffs mean, and what the pros and cons are, just from a neutral perspective, from how economists look at it, regardless of your take about Trump specifically, good or bad. This is kind of just a factual take about how they will work, and what each side is kind of hoping for with the ultimate result. And then I highlight some of the biggest takeaways and social media reactions that gained a lot of traction. This person was very incorrect, right? And we were surprised that some people had this take, saying that markets were going to quickly bounce and the rest of the world would capitulate. That obviously has not happened. And then down here is our list, where we have some of the top countries seeing almost half of their half of the total cost of their exports being tariffed. Cambodia, Laos, Madagascar, Vietnam, all near 50%, which is a very high number and can impact their willingness to export anything to the U.S. going forward until this quote-unquote trade war comes to an end, or at least starts to have some positive resolution to it. But essentially, even those that are not on this list, there's many that have a 10% tariff going forward. So it isn't even just exclusive to this list. There are tons and tons of different countries around the world that are now being tariffed that were not before. And that's going to impact the economy greatly. I'm going to take a pause here. Maksim, have you joined us yet, my friend? Sounds like I may be doing this one solo, but if he does come, just let me know, Max. Okay. So besides the tariff situation, I shouldn't say besides, because we're going to talk a lot more about it, but just to give an idea of how the correlation looks, I wanted to make sure to lead with some of the price differences between the three sectors right now: Bitcoin, the S&P 500, and gold. You can see the S&P 500 here in teal, just to give an idea of how much this bloodbath has come into play and how historic it really is. We have to go way back to mid-2024, I believe. Let's go back 1 year, and we should see the last time that the S&P was this low. So it's definitely dipped past that temporary crash that happened in early August. And we are now at the lowest point since May of 2024. When we were climbing here, I don't think many people were expecting we would get back to 11-month lows. But after this policy took effect and, the worst case scenario happened where one of the largest countries in the world, the largest country in terms of economy besides the US, decided to retaliate. Yeah, that's going to have a quick negative impact that just snowballs this already historic drop that we're seeing. So yeah, unlike COVID, which was an unprecedented event, this one was very much created by an economy, the US, that decided to change things up for their benefit. And it has, after, a little less than 2 days, not had any evident benefit so far. So this is much different than the COVID crash due to the fact that it is a voluntary policy change with the understanding that this was a risk. And we're going to have to see how long this ends up lasting. So there's a few scenarios, and I kind of talked about it in the article itself, but the ideal scenario is that, countries come together and they say, okay, let's stop this stock market bloodbath. We're going to find a solution. What kind of tariffs would you like, President Trump, so we can all be happy? And then Trump essentially negotiates a more fair policy for everyone, because the entire reason.
Right.
Hey, Maksim, good to have you here. The entire reason he's implementing these tariffs is because he wants a more fair system for his own country. And as a result, he's now getting higher tariffs from other big countries like China so far. So obviously that hasn't worked out, but that would be the ultimate scenario. If we see other countries come in and say, we'd like a solution so all the global stock markets stop getting destroyed and we can get American exports back at an affordable price. The worst case scenario is if we continue to see other countries follow in China's footsteps and say, screw you, Mr. Trump, now we're going to implement tariffs on you, and America is going to have to manufacture all of its own products, and America is going to have to spend the next years or decades creating factories to sustain the level of products that they had been getting before. And then there's a lot of in-between scenarios that can play out as well. But until there's a resolution, the theory or the expectation is that the stock market is not going to do much better than this. We might finally hit like some flat line, but I wouldn't be surprised if more countries jump in and we continue to see lower and lower impacts. Now, the good side would be most countries are not as big or impactful as China. So if, for example, Vietnam is the next to retaliate, it's not going to result in a 5% drop the way China just was able to do to the stock markets. But it's obviously hard to predict, and it's not just a tangible impact. If one country does this, that means the stock market does this. It's all about the crowd's reaction, right? Just like crypto has sentiment-driven price changes, so does the stock market, and anything can happen based on a flurry of different news, not just Vietnam did this, therefore percentage goes down by this much. So let me take another pause there. Maksim, quite a day here. Crypto is holding up fine, and we're going to get into crypto more, but what's your take on the overall global landscape and the chaos happening?
In some sense, it's simple, but it's not straightforward to collect this data. There is one way how you can measure a market sentiment by analyzing key figure and its perception. For instance, Ethereum when it's close to tops. Vitalik Buterin is a god. When it's close to bottoms, he is the one to blame for. Bitcoin at the moment was Saylor, who was the greatest. If even people from crypto, very suspicious, but even they say, okay, whatever he is promoting. And once we reach the bottom of Bitcoin, and maybe Saylor is liquidated, he will be the one to blame. Or the same, like Terra Luna was the same, or Alameda, FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried. Yeah, on the top there's the gods, on the bottom there's the one like Scott Copes. Now back to stock market. What did we see? I'd hear when Trump won elections, it will be very good for stocks and super good for crypto. Now once we get to the bottom, he will be the one hated by most market participants. So this is the way how we'll see precise plus minus maybe 1 week bottom. And actually we're getting there. I already read today in Twitter quite often people who were voting even for him, quite big accounts, saying, oh, we didn't expect it. Trump version 2 is different from Trump version 1. He's really destroyed. We might be going there much faster than we think. But you will see. There is a second component to the bottoms, and it looks, it's perceived in a way that there is no reason to believe it can become better. Yeah. For instance, in our specific case, of course, it's all about tariffs. So, and maybe believe that tariffs are reason to decline for years to come, and there is no way Trump will back up. So he will keep it, and only more and more countries like you actually will join. Just they take 1 2 months. It's bureaucratic, yeah, and it's as big as China, so it might have still, yeah, or like Canada and Mexico. Yeah. So if the people say, okay, it's just the process just started, in reality, market already probably at this point priced in everything, because market don't discuss things; it's pricing in immediately. Yeah, and but the conversations are lagging. So the conversation, okay, now the tariff war really for serious. It will take us years. It took us 10 years in 1930 till we recovered, actually 15 years. So then, and the Trump is hated person. Cool. We have a very solid bottom, but we don't know when exactly. There will be probably bottom in betweens. Maybe we already know it one. This we can discuss. But I'm talking about really, really solid, which will hold for a long time, half a year.
Yeah, I agree with everything you've said, Maxim. I think a lot of people forget there actually were tariffs implemented by this same president, Donald Trump, back in 2018, before Biden took over for 4 years. And it resulted in exactly... Yeah, it was definitely smaller, not as aggressive, but they were there, and it probably planted the seeds for Trump to try this again if and when he was reelected. And I think a lot of people in hindsight look back on it now and say that was a large contributor, if not the contributor, to why markets retraced back in 2018 after the huge all-time high back in 2017, where Bitcoin got to 19.2K or something, and people were celebrating, and then everything kind of went to crap throughout 2018 before some theorized there was a long-term positive impact on the markets throughout late 2018 all the way through early 2020 until COVID hit, which was obviously nobody's fault, debatably. But the point is, there are some theorists out there who believe that this is a short-term pain, long-term gain type of thing, where in the end, countries will come together and they will find peace, and then we'll go on a rapid rally to make up for all of these losses. I'm skeptical of that. I think this one is a lot bigger of a deal than what happened in 2018, and it's been much more publicized, and other countries have been hearing whispers of this for many months before it even happened. And the fact that they didn't immediately resolve it is a pretty good sign that they want to hold firm on this, or at least they're coming together in the background and figuring out how they want to respond. But it is a bit of a game of chicken, right? I think people are starting to see it as a little bit of an ego measuring stick right now, and every country has its own take on how much pain they can go through. So it's quite fascinating, and it's going to be interesting. But the other question I wanted to ask you, Maksim, is what do you think about the price action for Bitcoin and crypto itself? And is it as simple as crypto is not an export or import, therefore it shouldn't be impacted by this? Or is there something more complex going on?
No, of course, it's a bit more complex. Crypto is driven by available liquidity, and if majority, well, Bitcoin probably is less, but all altcoins, including Ethereum, do people have money left to participate in it? And if you are see worsening economic situation, not necessarily any decline in prices of crypto in the previous 6 months. It's not the first place you will put your money. You will start planning differently. Well, stocks falling, of course, because the pricing in decreasing economic activities and everything. So it's a bit more complex. So definitely there is nothing to be tariffed, or let's say there is no production lines in crypto. There is no value in a sense. So yeah, now it's a good in this sense for crypto, because we don't produce anything. So there is nothing to be destructed or destroyed except the liquidity itself. And it's the moment, yeah. Funding is bottom. Probably, I have a feeling crypto will find bottom faster, much faster than stocks. It's moving easier. It's moving faster. It's less affected by very, very complex calculation. With stocks, like with Nike, okay, it's a simple case. Yeah, okay. Oh, they produce everything in Vietnam, blah, blah, blah. You run the math. Maybe you have estimations. Pretty fast, yeah. So with some companies, it's probably very complex. So like I know in Switzerland, if they produce some complex machines, yeah, and Switzerland has now, if I'm not mistaken, 31% tariffs. Okay, you all have, I don't remember how, 20 something. And Italy has probably, as part of you, the same. And this complex machines produced in Switzerland now competing with those produced in some areas of Germany, and so those produced in north of Italy. And they all supply America, so it's very difficult to calculate. So American company who needs these machines, where they will buy it, yeah? Oh, you have no idea, yeah? Really complexity. And that's why stock market is very volatile, sometimes going down, and then some new calculation estimations coming up, and then maybe expectations, oh, maybe EU will change tariffs, I don't know. Crypto is straightforward, everything priced in fast. So, okay, this is liquidity we will get. Okay, destructions going on, nothing can do it. And we will move, I think, much faster to the final bottom in crypto, and then we'll recover much faster too.
Of course.
Yeah.
So there's the question of what the bottom is if nothing changes in the distant future. And there's the question of what the bottom is if we see a resolution tomorrow. And
so temporarily bottom feels like it's very, very close. There is enough angriness, enough giving up mode, and we've been moving down for a very long time already. So if I look into price structure, it's typically, and we look into narratives, which we'll probably look. We see typical narratives which you see on the way down, buy the dip, buying the dip, they disappeared, yeah. And now you have typical narrative for the bottom, tariffs, panic, war, yeah. So it's from this point, price structure, change of narrative, it is a bottomish sign. The question now in 1 week, I don't know. Yeah, this is details, but price combined with narrative observance, good. And also, you saw in our internal conversation, we start seeing finally, after a long time, this H consumes net realized profit loss. So there are token holders who pricing there is a chance to really crashing down. If we see more of it. Okay, if I see more of it, I will come out myself with a strong call. I'm not coming out yet. we see only, I think, one or two coins, not big enough to be very sure that token holders really go up and say, okay, now it's there is no chance we can recover. If I sell now, I'm still better if I have to sell 50% even down from here. I don't see it yet.
Yeah, even as we speak during the first 25 minutes of this call, I do see that Bitcoin is now up to about 83.4K. Stock markets are now down about 3% after being down 5%. So that's actually a pretty big jump. Doesn't mean the bottom's in at all, but yeah, we're actually starting to see at least a little bit of a sign of a temporary bottom. We'll see if it lasts. Could be negotiations going on in the background. It could just be the market massively trying to buy the dip right now. We'll see how this plays out, but I'm fascinated by the volatility, which, by the way, the VIX is up another 13.5% today. So those betting on volatility are the ones really benefiting right now. All right, so why don't we look at the alpha narratives now, as we discussed, make sure that it is hard refreshed as we discussed internally. Okay, why am I not? Oh, here we go. So we'll give this a quick hard refresh, and it is live. So the latest, yeah, we're seeing another spike in whales right now. It's clear that people are keeping a close eye on what the key stakeholders are doing. Minor uptick again in stable coins. I know there's been a lot of talk over the Stable Act, as well as XRP's new stable coin and World Financial stablecoin. We're also seeing a rise in Bitcoin talk, no surprise there, as well as Ethereum. And then art, for some reason, is getting a bit of an uptick as well. Interesting to see. But yeah, I think the biggest topic that we're seeing suddenly stand out would be the whale aspect. So maybe we take a look at what whales are doing at the moment. We'll full screen this. We're going to take off everything except for the 10 plus BTC wallets, as well as the specific 10 to 10,000 BTC wallets. And usually I like to look at the combined average of both of these lines together. So when you see that this line is going way down and this one is also going down, that's very bad for crypto. If one is going up and one is going down, it can mean that we're going to get some sideways action or some big volatility. If both are going up, we see a little bit of a rebound. And as of late, or at least over the past week, the 10 plus BTC wallets are going up because that's including a lot of massive liquidity wallets, exchange wallets, things like that. But the specific key stakeholders that are more controlled by humans, they were going down up until they did appear to buy the dip over the past 24 hours. So that's a little encouraging. I kind of like the sign that this isn't plummeting over the past 24 hours and we're going back up a little bit. We'll see if it lasts. It's only a small blip back up. And of course, they're speculating that these tariffs may not last too long without some sort of peace or resolution coming in. But based on key stakeholder behavior, this is a good sign that there's some positive reaction to at least the stock market dip, and people or large key stakeholders are buying more in crypto right now. We can also say confidently that the supply and exchanges are staying low, which is a great sign, at least based on the addresses that we track. It's significantly down compared to where we were 6 months ago and staying near those 7-8 year lows that we really haven't seen for since 2018. Let me check, make sure to get the accurate date since we last saw supply and exchange ratio this low. Yeah, it was right around October 2018 when we last saw sub 7.6% on exchanges. So that's a great sign as well. Let's go over to our main tab now, where we can take a look at on-chain metrics. We see the transaction volume is doing its normal thing, kind of staying within a range.
Did you notice, I didn't check transaction volume, now I see there seems to be a kind of a little bit of divergency. When for a long time we've been going down, and here transaction volume, you can open later on daily active hedges, Bitcoin also trending down. The first time divergence happened around 21st of February. Yeah, it's too many charts. By the way, your price so big candles. Why is it so
big? It defaults to that if
okay,
you zoom out to more than 6 months. So I
okay,
always have
okay.
to
Yeah,
change
okay. So you see both of them. So around this 21st of February, you see divergence when suddenly
Yep.
activities and transactions start picking up. It means there's a way enough buying or redistribution. It allowed what followed as later as some kind of bounce. At that time, it was quite good bounce. Now, after this, again, rational behavior or usual behavior continues, price going down, network activity, transaction going down. But I think starting from approximately 24th of March, it's again trying to pick up. Again, trying to pick up. Oh, it looks like it's trying to pick up. Maybe we'll see the end of today. If it's daily metric, yeah, so it has to be calculated by the end of the day. If we see by the end of the day the same or higher values for the elective addresses and transaction volumes, good, that's good. If not, okay, we'll have to wait. But this divergence is typically simple yet working sign. Yeah. And to use it, just keep in mind, if I was listening, there is a usual behavior, normal behavior. Price go up, network activity is going up, or price go down, everything cools off. So it's like at this time, there is no signal in the market. But once you see unusual activity, price keep pushing, but network activity, transaction volume start declining, okay, worry sign. Or price keep falling down, but there is increased in network activity and transaction volumes, okay, hopeful signs. This is the way how you should, or how I usually read this data. And I've seen it, yeah. The last week or so, this red candles you see, they're kind of increasing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, ever so slightly.
Ever so slightly, yeah. It's not the strongest signal, yeah.
Yeah, and if we go down to MVRV, we see it's actually still sitting around neutral. It was about a week ago when we updated last time, but yeah, it looks like average trading returns from both the short and long-term perspective are sitting right around even, meaning we're right where we should be in terms of average returns among wallets that have been active in the past 30 days or the past 365 days. Funding rate, this is an important one, especially if we're expecting overreactions from the crypto crowd. But right now, there really aren't too many. It seems as though people are fine with the status quo, maybe a slight bias toward longing at the moment, but not much at all. And that goes for every exchange. BitMEX is neutral, Binance just slightly high, DYDX going back and forth between slightly short versus slightly long. Zooming back out to the past 6 months, yeah, whales are not overly active and they're not sitting on their hands either. They're making a pretty average amount of transactions per day, specifically transactions sized above $100,000 or above $1 million. I noticed this, the 1,000 to 10,000 BTC wallets have risen significantly over the past week. They were at 1,945 wallets 1 month ago, and they now sit at 1,996. That's about a 2.62% increase in wallets. Of course, that's specific to this tier. And if we go higher, then it all kind of neutralizes out. But these are arguably the two most important tiers for price action. And we already checked out here. Whoops, let me make sure to find it. Too many tabs. We already checked out the 10 to 10,000 line here, and we see that it's kind of moving up and down right now, but it is a good sign that the number of wallets, especially the 1,000 to 10,000 tier, has moved up significantly in the past month. So could be a sign of some confidence there, even though the overall amount of coins hasn't moved up that much within these wallets yet. One thing I'm also keeping an eye on is mean dollar invested age. We saw a very small dip in the curve at the turn of the month, but it's mostly going up right now. So those hoping we're going to see another bull cycle or we're in the midst of one on this minor rebound we're seeing, no signs of that yet. This is, of course, a long-term indicator. And what we saw throughout the rally from early October all the way up until Trump's inauguration was a constant drop in the average age of coins or dollars invested sitting in wallets. And when those older coins are being moved rapidly, it's essentially circulating new dollars, new coins back into circulation, allowing for increased activity, increased overall movement of the network that generally perpetuates prices to go up over time. So we saw how the curve kind of stopped moving up, arguably around January 23rd or permanently around February 4th. And then prices really started to get some plummeting thereafter. So we're looking to see if there's another extended dip in this mean dollar invested age line. At least nothing now. What we can say, Maksim, is there was this huge age consumed spike a couple days ago. This was the largest in a couple months, so that's something.
Yeah, we need more of this. That's cool.
Yeah, and we kind of combined that with the large network realized profit spike that happened the next day. So this is right around when tariffs were announced. We began to see a bit of a reversal in price, and that coincided with this age consumed spike. And that's often the case. That's on rises when you see a lot of age consumed and network realized profit. That's what we want to see in order for prices to continue their momentum, essentially.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I was checking today, but our formula for sentiment was not negative yet. Yeah, it was still staying positive.
Which formula? The positive versus negative?
Yes.
Yeah, let's take a look at that. So we can do, I've got one for all of the top caps. Cool. I'll take off Solana because it's seeing bizarre bot activity.
Oh, who knows? Maybe it was the reason that it crashed again. Anyway, but we can check other coins here.
Yeah, I took off Solana for now. We do see a big spike in XRP positivity at the moment. This is actually the biggest of the year.
Yeah.
Ethereum is sitting in the neutral range. And then Bitcoin is actually a little lower than usual, not by much. But if I drew a line for just Bitcoin, it would probably be around right there. And we're a little under. So slight bearish bias right now, even though prices have not really moved. And that can be a good sign, considering there's this perceived panic that prices are going down when they're not. That happens sometimes because people just associate a crypto crash with the stock market crash. Without even looking at the price, which is always a fascinating pattern. But yeah, right now, just a slight bearish expectation, probably because people think that eventually crypto will see a little more impact by these tariffs the way stock markets have.
Okay.
Now, another thing we can look at crowd-wise is the higher or lower chart, which we've become particularly fond of over the past couple of months. See if it's saved here. We've got lower. Here we go. Okay, so we've got low or lower and higher. We'll make this 1 day, make sure the axis is shared. Actually, when we share the axis, it's going to make the red dominant, so we'll keep it like this. So over the past 3 months, we see that the red bars are actually much lower over the last couple weeks. So there's a decreased expectation that Bitcoin is going to go higher, or crypto in general. And it actually looks like there's an increase, especially right now, in lower expectations. So this sort of matches what we saw on the positive versus negative sentiment chart, where there's a little bit of a bearish bias forming, especially just in the past day since these tariffs were announced. There's a notable increase in low or lower right now, which is a good sign here, Maxim.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, cool. I was checking it 1 hour ago. It was not yet above higher. Okay.
Yeah, and to keep in mind, I'm only looking at mentions of low or lower in the context of these words: Bitcoin, altcoins, crypto.
Mm-hmm.
So
cool,
that may
but
change it.
Still, the social volume is high enough. I see absolute value is hundreds, so it's good. If it will be like 10 or 15, okay, it's too little, but we're talking about hundreds, 100 to, at the moment, almost 300 expectation for lower or last hour. Good. You're aggregating by 1 day, yeah? Can you aggregate it, let's say, by 4 hours? See how it goes?
Yeah, let's check that out.
It's too much. Maybe 12 hours?
We'll do it.
Yeah.
Well, we can do just the past week and see how that looks too.
Yeah, we have a chance for the last 4 hours to build expectation for lower. Actually, it's building right now, but we'll see how it ends up.
Yeah. And we can also look at the round number calls, which I like using a lot. We'll do the past month with 4-hour intervals. And this has a shared axis. So there's about an even amount of low or higher round number calls over the past month that makes this a pure comparison on the same axis. And you see right here, we got a lot of blue edging over the red, indicating there's people predicting for lower prices below 69K all the way down to 10K. As soon as that happened, we started to shoot up, and it's still staying pretty blue here, which is a good sign. So there are still expectations of much lower prices compared to higher prices. And that can often lead to some promising bounces in crypto. The opposite was happening here during the 3rd week of March with a lot of red appearing over the blue. So I like where we're at right now. This confirms that there is some bearishness.
Yeah. Well, you put a lot of effort to build this.
I tried.
It's a long query you have.
Well, the good news is you only have to do it once, and then it saves. So
yes, yeah. And then you are ahead of the whole market. Who else can do
exactly? Yeah. So yeah, keep in mind these charts, guys. Either we can actually share it. I'll drop it in Discord here for you, Balaresh, and maybe you can share it in the YouTube stream. But it's a really useful chart, and I'll also drop the high or higher. I can go back to that. I'll just do Bitcoin, actually. That's fine. You have both of these charts here. Okay, so yeah, feel free to use those 2 charts if you're on a trial or you're a Sandbase Pro member. It's a highly useful way of looking at the crowd's greed or fear at any given moment. I recommend combining both of those charts together, and if they match, if they're both showing that there's a bearish bias, that's a really good sign that we can go higher. If they're both showing that there's a bullish bias from the crowd, that's a sign that we can go lower. Okay, I know we have a few asset requests, one of which was Ethereum, so we'll start there. And let's take a look at how some of the on-chain and social metrics are looking for the number 2 market cap asset in crypto. We'll zoom into the last 3 months. Stop making these price candles so fat. And as we see for now, transaction volume for Ethereum is quite low. It's been continuing to dip throughout the past few months, even going back to this big spike in early February. The last 2 months have not been much to be excited about in terms of on-chain activity. Going down to daily active addresses and circulation, same thing. It looks like they're both dipping together over time. So this asset, which has notoriously underperformed over the past year and a half compared to most other top assets, is seeing a declining level of network activity, which is discouraging. What we do see as a good sign is the fact that average returns are way negative right now, way lower than what they could or should be, with returns sitting at about negative 7.3% for 30-day traders and negative 36.9% for 365-day traders.
So basically, on average, everyone is in loss.
Exactly.
Oh, like
and
not everyone. Maybe if you have 3 years, okay. Yeah, but if your last year, it doesn't matter. On average, most of these hodlers are. Yeah.
yeah, I'm actually going to check 3
You
years.
want to check 3 years? Okay.
Might as well see exactly when things got positive.
Mm-hmm.
Where did my MVR? Oh, here we go. And we'll make the axis 1 and -1 should be fine. So 3 years, yeah, also negative at about -23%. So even going back to early 2022, which I guess that kind of makes sense because there was
no one survives.
Yeah, that was a bad year for crypto. But yeah, short, long term, and very long term are all in the negative MVRV wise right now. So there can be some justification to buy here at such a low risk while there has already been so much pain among Ethereum traders.
Yes.
I do see there's a slight short bias right now. Checking which exchange. Yeah, it looks like Binance is seeing just a slight level of shorting for Ethereum.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that can be a good sign too. If those get liquidated, it can act as rocket fuel for prices to go higher. Whale transactions are very low at the moment. Yeah, near its bottom for the year. Doesn't mean whales are dumping. It just means whales are less active than usual. It's notoriously difficult to measure how much whales are accumulating in Ethereum because there's constant splitting of larger wallets due to DeFi and staking options. But we do see, just in terms of like 10,000 to 100,000, 100,000 to a million. Yeah, I mean, overall, there's less. If we just merge 10,000 and above, there should be a pretty notable decline over time. Yeah, so 1,160 about 6 weeks ago, and now we're at 1055, about a 9% drop among wallets of this size. But like I said, it's a little bit misleading or needs to be taken with a grain of salt because of the fact that DeFi and staking can throw whale numbers off, even if whales are holding a ton of Ethereum at any given time. Mean dollar invested age continuing to go up, so it's getting a little more stagnant over time for Ethereum. Not surprising after we looked at the on-chain metrics. And then unlike Bitcoin, lots and lots of network realized losses over time. Do you have any perceptions about the markets when you see a long-term decline here, Maksim, along with constant losses being realized?
It's not so straightforward as Bitcoin, but still, coins which are moved, it means that last time they've been moved, it was higher price. Yeah, it's a generally good sign. Yeah, generally good sign. There should be some activity as people, whether they're selling or preparing to sell or removing liquidity from liquidity pools or from some borrowing, lending. You will see it's on this metric as well. So the stronger the movements are, yeah, the better.
Interesting. I'm checking to see if there's anything else. Yeah, supply exchanges has started to move a little bit back up, but it's still very low compared to where it was at the beginning of the year. So that's a decent sign. Development activity, I mean, take it for what you will, but it has been going back down a little bit. RSI is in the 30s, so average would be 50. This suggests that we're in a slight bullish territory right now. Total amount of holders is by far the biggest of any cryptocurrency out there, with over 143 million non-empty wallets. And like I said, that's primarily due to DeFi and staking. Someone also wanted to check out Fantom, which is now known as Sonic. Let's zoom in a little bit. We may have an issue here. I don't know if it was because there was a branding change for Fantom, but Fantom definitely is ERC based, ERC20 based, and it doesn't look like we have metrics here.
Yeah, they launched their own network. Yeah, there will be not only social data we can check. Yeah.
Oh, so they're no longer using Ethereum based blockchain?
I think yes, they don't.
Aha. Well, then it's not an error on our part. They're using their own network, so no wonder we're not able to see. Sorry for the person who wanted to see some on-chain stuff for Sonic, but we at least have some social data we can share with you. Looking at social volume and dominance, we actually are seeing a pretty big spike in social dominance. Let me make sure to add, oh, price is on there. It's just very tough to see. Let's zoom in just a tiny bit. We'll go the past month. That's better. And then we'll make this a little smaller. We'll make these 8 hours instead of 1. And now this should be easier to see. These need to be less bright. There we go. So social dominance is actually way high at the moment. I'm not sure if there was a news story of some type, but it does look like we've seen a bounce, like most altcoins are bouncing right now. To be exact, we've bounced about 8% since that local bottom from yesterday. And social dominance is actually showing 6.9%, which is quite massive for an altcoin that has the market cap ranking of number 53. So there is some increased discussion about it. I don't know if I'd necessarily call it a top signal. Normally, if you see a sky-high social dominance spike and prices are rising, it's because people are getting FOMO toward the asset. But considering all assets are kind of seeing this mild bounce right now, I don't know if it's enough to be excited about or worried about, because this would indicate if this was a solo price spike that other altcoins were not seeing, and we saw a bit of a social dominant spike, it would be a signal that people are getting greedy and a top is forming. But right now, I don't think that's what's happening. And it's also not that big of a spike because we've seen it a few times before over the past few weeks be around this level. So it seems like people have Sonic on their radar right now and are definitely talking about it. But I'm not necessarily concerned that this is going to lead to a reversal. And that's about it. One other thing we can do for Sonic, so it's sitting at about 50, just over 50 cents right now. Let's see what happens if we go to the social tool this way. Going to use our previously used Bitcoin template. Actually, I don't know if this is going to work because the social tool does not like periods. What I was going to do is put, you know, like 25-cent Sonic versus 75-cent Sonic. But yeah, I'm not going to bother with that right now. Maybe I'll check that out during my own time. But periods and commas notoriously do not work on this platform as of yet. We are working on changing that. What we can do is low or lower or below.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll just do the old name and old ticker, and we'll do Sonic. I'm not going to do S because that's going to...
doesn't make much sense here.
Yeah. So we'll do low and then high, or higher or above. And let's see how this looks. There obviously isn't going to be nearly the sample size we see on Bitcoin.
Too little volume, difficult to say anything.
See if we can get, there's something. Let's see. So we see a little, the sample size is just a little too low. I mean, even if I make it weekly, I don't think it's going to make much of a difference. Not really. Well, the experiment idea was there at least, but Yeah, the idea is if we have enough of a sample size and we see a lot of people talking about higher Fantom, that's a signal that we could see a top. If it's a lot of lower discussion, that's a signal we could see a bottom. If I put on shared axis, it's actually not bad. I mean, that's a good bottom signal there, and that's a good top signal there, but it's a little too noisy. We'll see. I would love to find a way to get a little, oh, I will say this, we've been looking at Bitcoin's price, so that could change something. If we go to, I think we're still using the old slug on the back end and old ticker. If I switch to Fantom, which is now Sonic, I understand. No, it cuts off. Curious if we switch to Sonic or S. Aha, yeah, we do have the new ticker and slug. So just checking. Yeah, I mean, that's a decent top signal. It's still, I think it's too noisy. Decent bottom signal. It works so-so. I don't think there's enough data for us to make an analysis on this, but overall, I think Sonic looks fine. And since we don't have on-chain data, that's really all we can say. We did have one other asset request, and that was NAKA. Nakamoto Games, which is a very obscure altcoin. It's 558th on the market cap rank list. And it's not, oh, it is ERC20, but it seems to have limited data. We do have daily active addresses, which has been declining over time pretty significantly. Currently seeing about 250 daily active addresses over the past 30 days on a daily basis. Whale transactions, fairly non-existent. We do see certain spikes like this. January 3rd looked like it was a profit take by whales, and we saw since that time, going back 3 months, the price has fallen by about 65, 66%. So market cap is about a third of what it was. Looking at key stakeholders with the price sitting at about 34, 35 cents, we can call key stakeholders anywhere above 1 million or more, just to be safe. Aha. Oh, but look at the, I don't know what to make of this, Maxim, but it looks like the percent of holdings is in the negative.
No. Sometimes, yeah. Well, the number could, yeah. Sometimes we have this issue with labeled metrics, but the shape is looks correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
The shape should always be correct.
Let's also look at the absolute coins. That might help. 1 million or more. Yeah. So this is a good sign. We don't have the exact numbers because of the axis, but if we go like this, so we see that there's been about 5.6 million NAKA coins being accumulated over the past 4-ish weeks or so. And this is actually a pretty solid sign. There's something going on with Nakamoto Games, which has obviously struggled from a price perspective, but there might be a bit of a push going on from key stakeholders right now. This is what I would call a bullish divergence.
Yeah, you can say so. Even though, I don't know, have you ever heard about this coin? It's,
nope. No, if it's outside the top 500, it's pretty hard to track unless it was really in the news for some reason.
How is it possible? Everything crashing, but okay, you never know.
Yeah. I mean, this is a pretty recent push. We had an initial jump here in the second week of March and some steady accumulation. And then just at the turn of the month, from March 31st and onward, they've just exploded in accumulation. I mean, just between March 9th and now, no, the percentages are off. I can't check that. But the number, the 5.6 million coins, accumulated, that should be accurate. That's a massive number for such a small coin. So the market cap is only 36.6 million. So if we're talking about 5.6 million coins at 35 cents, get roughly $2 million worth of coins were accumulated just in the past 3 to 4 weeks or so. And the market cap is only 36.6 million. It's a pretty high percentage of the entire market cap being accumulated by wallets with 1 million or more. I wonder if we have total holders. Yeah, it's been going down. That's a good sign. So retail traders have had enough as prices have continued to disappoint them. They were going up for quite a while, but we saw a turning point right as Trump got inaugurated and markets started to correct. And AKA was already starting to go down way before that. So this looks like a decent setup. I wouldn't go as far as to predict, this coin's about to explode, but the signs are there that it could go on a bit of a mini rally.
Maybe only need to look for, if ideally possible, some spikes of H consumed, and could be, Given,
quite fascinating.
for that, typically need to look into holder structure. Is there enough distribution between those who hold for longer time, so that can cause H consume? But if even it doesn't exist, maybe transaction volumes will be higher. H consumed is always a good measure. This at bottoms, it happens.
Checking. Yeah, we don't have it. But thank you to the individual who requested this asset. It's nice to look at a few more obscure assets that normally are not on our radar. So very cool to see. And I'm going to now check on this asset a couple times a month and see how the progress is after this big bullish divergence with key stakeholders has appeared. So good stuff. Brother Maksim, any other thoughts before we conclude our stream for the week?
Okay, sorry, I had to answer.
That's okay.
I
was just asking if there's any other thoughts before we conclude.
No, I heard the question. So where should we put our thoughts? The setup is good. We have a replacement of buy the dip narrative is really concerning one. Good. If we can see on extending basis the social search for high, lower, taken by 4 hours till the end of the day today. If we see a few signaling blue bars, this will be good. If not, okay, again, it will be mixed. But it should be somewhere not so far away. Somewhere not so far away. Based on what I'm reading on media and the price structure for a long time in crypto, I have no idea about stocks, but crypto has to be close.
Yeah, I mean, it's so news dependent right now. Normally we can say that it's pretty speculative based and the crowd is leaning too far bearish or too far bullish. Right now, it's like we're kind of just waiting for how the rest of the world reacts to the bombshell news that Trump dropped.
Yes.
And right now we know at least one of the other largest countries in the world did not like it very much and they retaliated. And that's why we're having a continued bloodbath right now in the stock market. But the question is how much crypto can thrive despite the bloodbath going on if it continues. And I would say that crypto is likely going to range until some resolution happens, and it can bounce significantly if there's a resolution. So either neutral or positive is not a bad scenario right now.
Okay. Then let's revisit it next week.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
All right, brother. Thank you for joining, Brother Max, and thank you all for joining who asked questions live. And for those watching on replay, make sure to drop a like if you can do so. It always helps us out. Subscribe if you haven't done so yet, and we will talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.